we'll see what happens as the day goes by. Uh, Ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for joining us on this week's edition of the Weekly Roundtable. I am Frank Audio Chocolate Johnson, co-host of the Weekly Roundtable, co-founder of the Liberty First Foundation. To my immediate side is Michael Marshall, my compatriot in arms, fellow co-host, fellow co-founder. And below us here is Michael Vasquez, the dragon of the Southern Tier, relocated to the Bronx, striking fear and terror into the hearts of the politically absent-minded in that, the lowly borough, the home of the Bronx Bombers, where AOC reigns supreme. and Jerry Nadler continues to walk around like the Penguin. Gentlemen, how are you this evening?
Doing good.
Yeah, not bad considering some of the lies that we get to hear from Biden, some of the idiocy that we've heard from Nadler and from AOC. I mean, God, what a crew.
I think this week, especially, if we actually had to paraphrase them, the fair and balanced media, if we actually had a fair and balanced media this week and covered all of the crap that we've been able to just like find because we look for it, this country would be absolutely up in arms with the garbage that's been coming out of Washington, D.C. and the periphery this week.
Well, it's not
Well,
that
we've
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
we've commented on this show in the past. Okay, we don't want a fair and balanced media. Okay, we want a media that covers the truth, regardless of which side.
Right, an honest media.
Okay, a fair and balanced media doesn't necessarily mean an honest media. It means that for every good story on one side, they're going to find a good story on the other side. For every bad story on one side, they're going to find a bad story on the other side. Okay, that's fair and balanced, but it's not honest.
No, it's not necessarily factually correct, and the thing that I find about it isn't that a lot of the things that we've been seeing this week in particular, they're not stories that are new or anything that's, excuse me, or anything that's surprising. It's that it's been downplayed. This is all stuff, all of the negatives, the things that we have caught, the lies from Joe Biden on 9/11 as an example, that's been thrown on to page 200 on a 15-page newspaper. It's been put into the trash heap and had everything else dumped on top of it so you don't pay attention to it. Even though if any other president in the history of America did the same things, there would be absolute outrage in the nation because it's unacceptable.
Well, not only that, I guess Biden came out this week with specific instructions to the media on what they should be covering and how they should be covering it.
Yes, he had a specific. This is new. Again, not a new story. They did the same thing with as it came out when they were doing the Disinformation Governance Board, the Ministry of Truth in America. They were at the same time, they were also speaking to all the social media companies, and they were giving them directives on what to say, what not to say, and how to punish people. Besides the fact that they have connections, deep connections, with many people within almost every single one of the social media companies. So, go ahead.
Well, what was funny about that is that it took a lot of insider research and some people making some phone calls without people knowing, and leaks and other stuff for the American public actually find out that
right.
Yes, we were suspicious about it, but we got confirmation. Now they've gone to the point where they've said, you know what, we're not even going to go behind the back door.
Yeah, we're not going to hide it anymore. We're
just going to put it out there. We don't want we want the media to put extra scrutiny on every claim coming out of any Republican corner about anything, and we should just have the final say.
Yeah, but it wasn't hiding. Yeah, but they weren't hiding because every social media company since 2018, hearing before Congress, that having congressional hearings, whether in the Senate or in the House of Representatives, every year they showed up, and every year they talked about, here's another algorithm that's unfairly and incorrectly literally censoring and shadow banning conservatives and Republicans specifically, including members of Congress itself, including our government, and unfairly punishing them and silencing their voice. Again, every year for 5 years in a row. They haven't been hiding that they've been doing this. It's just been downplayed, and everyone goes on to talk about the Kardashians or the Mandalorian or the Marvels. We're told to worry about everything except what's actually affecting our government and our rights in comparison to the government. It's really terrifying. Great example. We'll get right into it. 9/11 was this week.
Mhm.
The end of 9/11. By the way, had a great conversation with 4 Marines. Wild, because we had people on the left and on the right and in the center. It was great. That was the Larry Sharp interview I did. But at the same time we were speaking about that, and it's funny because every Marine saw this, and they were Howie Hawkins, who is a communist, was incensed. Okay, this is how extreme this was. We were all incensed because Joe Biden got up on stage in Alaska. Why in Alaska? No one understands why he went there. But he was in Alaska, and he lied to the American people and said, oh, yeah, on September 12th, 2001, he was in New York City at Ground Zero. That is a lie. That is a bald-faced, absolute factual lie. There is nothing even close to the truth about that. And he lied to the American people, rewriting history, trying to make people believe that, no, he's just a great guy and he's just doing a fantastic job and he really cares. No, he doesn't. This is an abuse of the reality. And by the way, just to show everyone, why is it not showing properly? There it is. Okay. So just so people know, this is coming from CNN. Fact-checked him. And CNN, for themselves, said he lied to the American people. They went to the White House. The White House itself corrected Joe Biden and said, nope, September 12th, 2001, he was on his way to Washington, D.C. to pass a bill to support New York in their emergency. He had nothing. He didn't show up until September 20th, 9 days later, along with 98 senators. He had no independent action. He wasn't doing anything special. He did what everyone else did, and he wasn't in New York, and he didn't come to New York, and he had no extra compassion separate of anyone else. And it's absolutely infuriating and insulting. And by the way, CNN then went on to mention a whole slew of other lies that Joe Biden has made. Mind you, they left out and everyone in Afghanistan, every American in Afghanistan that wanted to come home, he brought them home, except for 100 people. That lie of 2021, yeah, that's not being mentioned. But they mention a slew of his other lies. There is no president, I don't care, left, right, any president that could have lied to this degree about such a immense disaster against America. None of them would be able to survive the backlash that would have come at them, except for Joe Biden, because he is being protected, because they just killed this story. Killed it.
Yeah, they did.
Well, he was there in spirit.
My ass. He wasn't even there in spirit. He showed up when everyone else showed up.
Oh, his excuse was, well, presidents after 22 years after Pearl Harbor quit attending ceremonies for it. And that was his excuse.
Yeah, that's his excuse. But then why is it that every single president has laid a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier?
Mm-hmm.
Every year. And by the way, let's be honest, if it was not such a big deal, then why did you send Kamala Harris into New York so she could get the photo op of being there with every other Democrat, every other Republican, everybody who had been at 9/11? If it wasn't such a big deal, then why didn't you send Kamala down to the southern border to do her job that she has never done? And by the way, she immediately left New York City. And what was her big thing, what did she rush off from New York City to do that same day? She went to Denver to get fundraising money for the 2024 election. Okay, that tells you how sincere she was. She didn't go to DC. She didn't go to any of the other sites. No, she went directly from, oh, you got my photo op? See how presidential I'm being? By the way, let me go get some checks for the next election. It's so insincere.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Well, in case you haven't heard, she's a rock star. She's a rock star now.
Yeah. And just like
she's just done such a wonderful job at the southern border.
No. It's got nothing to do with policy. She's a rock star.
Only
this
if you have
is the term that the Twitter sphere have been using for her, because I don't know if you guys have noticed it, but they have been trying very, very hard to build her public profile into the likability category as of late. I don't know if you've seen this. It started a couple of weeks ago with the whole hip hop is 50 years old. And, you know, now the hip hop museum, the Hip Hop Hall of Fame, she attended that. She did that. Now she's on this little college speaking tour. And every one of the pundits I see on, all the usual suspects, the paid shills, they're not part of the campaign, but they're getting a check anyway. Kamala's a rock star. Look how popular she is. Don't tell me she's not popular. Don't do this. The grooming of the American public has begun.
Yes.
Well, it's been right in line with her saying, I'm ready to take over for Joe Biden as president.
Right.
And
I've been saying for a while, they're trying to figure out how to do the exit strategy, because the only exit strategy that this administration is concerned about is how to get Joe out of the office and not into a red suit or an orange suit. That's the exit strategy that they're worried about. How to get him out, get her or somebody else in, whether it's her or Newsom, into that position before 2024.
It won't be Newsom.
And whoever it is, they will immediately pardon Biden for all offenses.
Biden and Hunter. But here's it again. The guilt. I mean, the evidence has already been collected, disseminated, verified.
Oh, not according to Democrats. According to Democrats, there is absolutely no evidence for an impeachment trial.
Except everything that's been found and verified by even the New York Times has finally gone over all the data and said, nope, it's all verified. It's all real. And these are all elements of crimes, literal crimes, not just the gun charge, which we know he did. I mean, at the very least, just the gun charges are 100% correct about Hunter Biden. There is no question on that.
Yeah, but they're talking about the impeachment that McCarthy came out with this week. Okay. The impeachment investigation. They are claiming that there is zero evidence to warrant an impeachment investigation against Joe Biden.
Except the 2015, the verified 2015 deposits into his bank account from foreign nations. That is worth investigating.
You've got that. Okay. You've got the handling or the misappropriation of classified documents. There's countless things that you could come up with.
Well, just those two alone.
As far as right.
Yeah, we've got those two, which is one, misappropriation of funds, which would be influence peddling with a foreign nation. That violates the Hatch Act amongst various other violations. And then you've also got the secret data that he had for 40 years as a senator, which I don't care how they want to look at this, is illegal. It is illegal.
You've also got his quid pro quo with Ukraine.
That is another influence peddling, which we have a videotape of him admitting that he was doing exactly that. So again, and this was in 2016 when he was vice president and Obama was in. So again, there's 3 charges that are worthy of impeachment. He cannot escape. And Democrats can say, it's not that serious. Yes, it is. It is impeachment worthy, whether they like it or not. And they're just trying to downplay it. Go ahead.
Well, there's another thing about the gun charges that's kind of been bothering me.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen anybody on the news pick this up yet. Not a single person on the news has picked it up. The 4473 that he lied on was in regards to a pistol that he illegally purchased as a prohibited person.
Yeah.
That gun was a Colt Cobra revolver.
Right.
Okay. Colt Cobra revolver.
Mm-hmm.
When they got his laptop, there's an image on the laptop I'm going to share here.
Mm-hmm. Different gun.
And that is a Stoger Cougar 9mm semi-automatic handgun. I don't know where it went. It's gone. There it is. That's a Stoger Cougar. Stoger is an offshoot of the Beretta company. The comparable gun to that would be the PX4 Storm. That's a Stoger Cougar.
It's not a revolver. For people who know nothing about firearms, that's not a revolver.
Where is it?
No.
Where is it now? And why are there no charges related to or questions being asked about this particular firearm when the only questions I've seen being related to anything having to do with the charges is a Colt Cobra revolver with 38. The Colt Cobra, I believe it was a 38 special that it was in question. Nobody's asking about this one. Nobody's asking why. Why is nobody? Is it because it would be an additional charge?
Yes.
You know,
That's
now
why.
we show a habitual, series of behavior. But I don't understand. So when this comes up, I want to know. I'm challenging somebody in the media to find out why the government has not asked the question about the Stoger Cougar, Stoegar, Stoger Cougar, that's in Hunter Biden's hand with his finger on the trigger and the hammer cocked, by the way. Hunter, not
Reckless.
A good look for gun safety.
Well, again,
not
he's
a good,
so.
You finger off the
So
trigger
that's a
until you
violation
identify your target.
Yeah,
well they're going to claim that's not him.
No, that's you're zoomed in.
Well, this is only one of the photographs. There's a photograph that I've seen of this handgun in his hand when you see his face. And they were all verified to come off of his laptop. So
these are his images. Go ahead.
Yeah, these are all verified to come off of that hard drive. All verified off of that hard drive. Why the government does not ask a single question about that gun? Because if he bought that gun in a gun store, then that's 2 4473s that he lied on, or he bought them at the same time. And why is that charge not? Why is that gun not being mentioned?
Well, here's another thing. Since he's already in violation of the felony, this is an additional felony crime. He's committing a second felony, or at the very least, the misdemeanor of recklessly handling a firearm. And depending on which image it is on his laptop, possibly in the presence of a minor. So there are, no matter how you want to look at it, whether he possesses it, or rather, whether he owns it and it's unlicensed, so thus being an additional unlicensed firearm, or just the fact that he is possessing it in an unsafe manner and in the presence of a minor potentially, these are additional charges. This is one of the reasons why for the last year, the FBI has had 400 charges against Hunter that have not been moved forward by AG Merrick Garland, the man who owes everything to the Biden-Harris administration. And why Joe Biden doesn't want to speak about this, and why they've been trying to distance Hunter from Joe and why they tried to give Hunter a sweetheart deal with immunity until a judge said that's illegal. That's unprecedented, and no one should get immunity for everything under the sun in the future. They were trying to sweetheart him into silence and to get past this. It's not happening. And suddenly, when the sweetheart immunity no longer applies, Kamala's talking about, I want to be president and showing up at 9/11 instead of Joe Biden. Kind of tells you where the Democrats see the future. No matter how they want to spin it, they see the future. And it's not good for Joe Biden. That's all the evidence I can see coming out of this. And again, and they can't hide the abject ineptitude of Biden and everything he has done. I mean, this kind of leads into the other thing I wanted to bring up. Notice that no one's talking about the economy right now. Joe Biden has been trying to push Bidenomics all summer long. He's been trying to turn that around and say Bidenomics is actually a good term. It means good things. That's a positive because the economy is better than it's ever been. You don't know how good you have it right now because the economy is gangbusters. This is what Joe Biden has been trying to convince people of. Except it's not true. Whoops. How do I get this? There it is. Except it's not true. It's never been true. Remember, he said, well, don't worry about inflation, which happens to be up 16% under Joe Biden alone. No, don't worry about that because the real number is unemployment. Well, okay, if you want to go by that, the unemployment rate right now, and this is coming directly from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, this is the government itself, it's 3.8%. It's up 0.3 of a point, about 300,000 people. It's high. It jumped up. Why? Because everything they've been trying to do to lower the numbers throughout the summer, as he said, Bidenomics was working. They can't keep pushing that lie. And all of a sudden we saw it skyrocket. Not only are you able to see, this is coming from the government itself. You can't tell me these are partisan numbers. If you go to the A8, and this is the important one, this is the number of small businesses in America. And if you look at that number carefully, what you will see is that that's down. Again, down. We have less small businesses than a year ago, than several months ago, than a month ago, which means the number of people who can possibly have a job has gone down. Part of the reason why the unemployment rate is climbing up higher and higher. There's just one more piece of data, and I know people hate numbers, but I'll show you just one more, just to make life simple. Inflation itself is up 0.6 of a point. Again, this is all coming from the United States government. It has nothing to do with left, right, or anything else. It's not my data. It is the data. This is the truth. You can't spin the numbers. And if you look at the numbers, you can see what's up. All items. Inflation increased, even though they've been telling you, no, it's down, it's down. No, it increased. You're paying more for food. You're paying more for gas and energy. You are paying more. Inflation is real. Bidenomics is killing America. It is killing people's lives and livelihood. And again, the news media downplaying it this week. News came out this week, the 13th of September, 2 days ago. Media, we can't talk about that. That's not, unemployment's not important. It's only been important all summer long as you've been trying to justify Bidenomics. Now it's not important at all. Inflation? Well, we don't need to talk about the inflation rate. Well, it's been important to people's pockets every day. Every metric you can look at is telling you this is a failed administration, and they are spinning as hard as they can to try and make sure people just don't pay attention to it.
Well, and not only that, they're not saying that inflation is going down. They're saying the rate of inflation is going down.
Yeah. So we're not climbing as fast as we were climbing 4 months ago, but we're still up.
Okay.
It's still climbing.
And honestly, that's the whole thing. Is they are spinning these, and they're very careful with the way that they are selecting their words on this. They're very careful on the time spans that they are usually utilizing in order to show quote unquote progress.
Yeah, they're trying to. They're wording, and this is the game that the media likes to play. This is why it's called. When they word it in a way that if you're just reading the headlines, and most people just read the headlines, just like on Twitter or TikTok, they're just looking at the headlines. And so the impression they get is it's not that bad. Oh, it's not that important. Then you get your paycheck. Look at every bill you've been paying since 2020, since February of 2021. Look at every
Well,
bill you've
not only
paid.
that, okay, and people need to look at their withholdings. Okay, specifically their tax withholdings, and they're going to find that that's increased.
Yeah.
Under the Biden administration.
Yeah. He's taxing you more, taking more out of your pocket, just like Hochul, just like we see in California under Newsom and Whitmer and Michigan. All the Democrats, everywhere the Democrats have control, you have more taxes, whether they call it a tax or a fee or licensing. You're paying more, you're getting less, and things are getting worse. And yet they're telling you, but that's good. Don't you know? These are the rainbows, and this is the new normal, and you should be happy. They're assuming that we're dumb zombies.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's it. We
Well,
are entering the age of utopia. Don't you understand, Mike? Okay, this is the age. This is the path that we must go down in order for us to own nothing and be happy. Don't you understand this, Michael?
Thank God, no.
Okay, I mean it's simple. It's evident everywhere. Okay, if we make everything expensive enough that nobody can afford it, then government gets to take it over.
Yeah, and how well has that worked out in Venezuela?
Okay, if we make everything so that nobody has a job other than what government approves of, then guess what? We're beholden to the government. Okay, we will own nothing and be happy.
And like I said, look at how well that's worked out for people in Venezuela, China, North Korea, Cuba. Let's pick your socialist nation.
This is going to be a global thing, Michael. It's not just going to be a single country, because when just as a single country, it doesn't work. But when it's global, then we have no choice but for it to work.
It's never, no. I know that's the promise they keep making to make people think, no, but just like with Biden or with Obama in this, they constantly said,
why do you think
more time?
Why do you think they are going so hard at making billionaires and corporations look so evil?
Because they need the money to pay the bills.
Well, it's not just that. Okay, they want to make them look evil so that Americans are turning against them, so that it justifies more government interception of their incomes.
Well, plus it makes it easier so that when somebody like Maxine Waters, who says, I'll tell you what this liberal is in favor of. This liberal is in favor of taking over, socializing all of your businesses.
Mm-hmm.
When you paint the corporations as the evil enemy and the enemy of the common man, then it has that much less persuasion you have to do for the common man to justify your seizure of assets and your nationalizing of those companies. That's what it's about. They want to make it easier for them to go in and say, well, public opinion is on our side. This is so 1938, exactly the same thing. When you vilify somebody enough, you can make them an enemy of the state, and then no matter what you do to them,
that's what they did with the rail barons. Okay, that's what they did that literally ended up leading to the Great Depression, okay, was instituting these types of policies where they went after these quote unquote greedy billionaires, greedy millionaires, greedy businessmen, the greedy top 1%.
Yeah, the people who are paying all the taxes and creating all the jobs.
Well, yeah, that's exactly okay. And they don't understand that every action, regardless of what it is, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Okay. So you start taking away from billionaires, guess what? You're going to start losing jobs. There is no way around it. Okay. If billionaires can't invest more money in other businesses, guess what? Those other businesses are going to start shutting down, or they're going to have to start laying off employees because they've got to have capital to run.
And
Which they're
then
doing.
they look even more evil. Look, they're laying everybody off so they can
Right.
keep more of the money for themselves. Those
Oh,
evil
exactly.
Well,
corporations.
that's always the argument is, see, they're just doing it. I saw someone in one of my videos. I had someone telling me, well, it's just the corporations being greedy. No. Matter of fact, it was about Joe Biden and energy. And the fact that Joe Biden on day one, he shut off America's ability to be energy independent. And from day one, January 21st of 2021, the price of oil and energy in America started climbing, which increased and helped to exponentially move up our inflation rate. And they're like, well, no, that wasn't Joe Biden because that didn't have an impact. You don't understand markets. You don't understand money. And that's why he gets away with it, because people don't understand the math or how the economy works. But
No, they don't.
When he shut down the XL pipeline, yes, it wasn't built, but that meant the future that we were going to compete for the oil that we would have got from Canada. Now we have to get from somewhere else. And since he's cut off the leases, it isn't coming from Alaska.
It's not coming from the United States anywhere because he shut down all leases, not just Alaskan leases, all leases.
Yeah, offshore and even in the interior. So that means we have to compete. Instead of helping Germany by selling them natural gas, we're now competing with them, which means they're more dependent on Russia, which means they can say less about Russia going into the Ukraine than they ever could have before. And they're paying more for oil and gas. And every country in the world that sells oil and gas gets to sell it at a higher price. Why? There's more demand. This is why we have inflation. One of the key components of inflation, besides food, is energy, driving the cost up.
Well,
people don't think about it.
Let's look at one other thing. Okay. So here we are, a world power that promotes democracy. Okay. Now, of the world powers that actually produce oil, how many of those actually promote the democratic processes?
Of the nations that produce oil, how many are
right?
You're looking at about 25%, because 25% of them are in democratic nations, first world nations. So that would be, United States, the major oil producers.
Well, the United States isn't producing oil anymore because all leases have been shut down.
No, we still do. To be fair, we still do. Not enough to be energy independent, but we could be more dependent on oil than we are, but we're nowhere near independent. So we are an oil producer, just not a net independent producer. So we would count, and we're the big democracy. Let's see, the major ones would be Saudi Arabia, it would be Qatar, Iran.
Saudi Arabia doesn't really promote democracy, even though they're a democratic country. They don't promote democracy. Qatar doesn't.
No, I'm not saying they. I'm not saying they. I'm just running down who are the major countries in the world, and so you got America, Okay. So that's democracy. The other people in the world, well, we're talking about Saudi Arabia, Qatar, we're talking about Venezuela, we're talking about Iran. None of these countries are democracies. None of them. Everyone, pretty much every other major supplier of oil in the
Are
world.
authoritarianships.
Yeah, to some degree. Everyone else.
Okay. So, what better way of controlling the world than through oil?
But not the way that we're told from the leftists who are saying, well, it's all about greed. No, it's really not. Not if you understand economics. But of course, most people don't, because they go, oh, well, inflation isn't important. It's about unemployment. Well, when the unemployment's going up, well, don't worry about any of that. It's still okay. I mean, God, what metric am I supposed to judge this by? What's in my bank account? Well, that's down too.
Okay. They are literally trying. I do believe there is a concerted effort to remove the United States as a world power.
Yeah.
And this administration is part of it.
Yeah.
Okay. It actually started under the Obama. And one of the biggest reasons why they are so dead set against Trump was because he was reversing that.
Successfully.
He was taking away some of the damage that was done under the Clinton and Obama administrations. Okay. Both Bushes, regardless of how you want to look at them, they did nothing more than held the status quo.
Yeah.
Okay. The Clinton administration, the Obama administration, hell, even going back to the Carter administration, was designed to lessen the United States power as a world power, or influence as a world power.
For the most part, yeah. And then you've got Reagan is a major change on that, which is why they called him the Great Cowboy. And yet the world prospered because of it.
And that was another president that they were so harsh against when he was actually in office.
Yeah. And he did such a great job of keeping the world peaceful and calm for the most part.
Well, he's one that literally led to the reunification of Germany. Yes. He was the leader. He's one that led to the downfall of the Soviet Union.
For the most part, yeah. Yeah. He put the final nail in the coffin. Yeah. It's interesting when you start taking away the propaganda, the emotions that people want to attach to this, and you just go by and look at the numbers.
And actually, Trump was actually on the pathway towards potentially reunifying Korea.
Yes.
Except he was out of office. But he actually had Kim Jong-il. Is that him?
Yeah, Kim Jong-un.
Actually talking. Okay. And was actually being cordial. And there was talks about an eventual reunification of Korea.
Yeah, the first talks in 50 years that the United States had with North Korea since the ceasefire that still exists to this day.
Well, the Korean War is still ongoing.
Yeah, it's a ceasefire right now.
Right. And all that went to naught with Biden coming into office. Okay. China was actually in cordial talks with us.
No, I don't know if I would say cordial, but they definitely were in talks with us.
Okay. Well, they were in talks towards stuff that would be not like they are now.
Well, they weren't blatantly saying they're going to invade Taiwan with force and maybe barn stomp across the rest of Southeast Asia. They definitely had no intention of any of that.
Well, Trump was also the only president in recent memory that you could say not only did he allude to it in message, but said so in public, about China, 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 and their constant thievery of intellectual properties, technologies, and all the
Right.
rest of this stuff.
And
And
he's actually making headway on that too.
and was calling them out on it, saying,
Mhm.
"This isn't going to fly. I'm not going to do this anymore.
Okay,
We're
and
going to renegotiate."
don't get me wrong, there's a lot of things Trump did wrong, and there's a lot of things I don't agree with
I'm not saying he
from
wasn't
Trump.
a perfect president, but there's a
Okay,
big difference
but
between
honestly,
perfection
he
and where
did
we
put
are.
America first, and he was building us back up on the world stage as being a leader.
Yeah, Biden is not leading America by lying to Americans about 9/11, by lying to Americans about his business interactions, by lying to Americans and protecting his son over America, by being influenced by other nations. He is not benefiting America. Our allies don't trust us anymore, and they are pissed at us because the inflation in the United States, it isn't just in the United States. That's affecting the rest of the world. We're the largest economy, second largest, it depends on the day, the largest economy in the world. When we have inflation, everyone has inflation. It hurts everyone else. He's not just hurting us, he's hurting everyone. So they're all pissed.
Well, when America gets a sniffle, the rest of the world gets cold.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's literally what it comes down to because our businesses have such a significant impact on the global economy that literally it's not just the American economy, it's the American businesses that have influence around the world. Okay. Just for instance, let's take a brand that pretty much everybody knows, Motorola.
Okay.
Okay. There is not a country that Motorola does not have an impact on.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Another one, okay, look at Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay. Except for a few countries that are actively seeking to suppress information. Facebook has an influence on every country in the world. Twitter is another one.
Yeah.
Amazon has gone from a primarily United States based company to a company that is now reaching into global markets. Okay, there are very few countries, and then if you start looking at our oil production, okay, there it gets even broader on its reach. You look at telecommunications, we've got huge global presence in telecommunications. You look at network equipment, okay, which is part of telecommunications. The leading network equipment provider in the world is Cisco.
Yeah. Has been since the 90s.
Okay, I mean, these are American companies that have global impact. And when we have problems here in the United States, regardless of what those problems are, it impacts the rest of the world. And when we're seeing our supply chains and other items here in the United States having issues because of inflation, because of um, the inability to gain supplies and other items, it impacts everyone globally.
No, I know. It's just that they keep downplaying it again, just like they did on the news that came out Wednesday. They threw it on a back burner. Why? Because it's
We are
not.
going to get into the strike here in just a little bit, Peter, because there's some very significant things that we do need to talk about on it.
Well, the GM, the UAW, the auto workers
Right.
strike, that was supposed to be resolved when Obama brought back GM using public money and then lost that investment. That's what he called it, an investment in GM. And actually lost the American people money, the cash for clunkers that lost America money. That is, these are all facts.
There's other things going on here with this UAW strike that a lot of people are unaware of.
Well, you know what?
Okay.
One thing I want to point
Everybody's
before you go further. One thing I want to point out that's really interesting. We have massive. You gotta say, how can the economy be healthy if all the major unions, we're looking at Hollywood, we're looking at UAW, they're striking for more money? The economy can't be doing that good. They don't strike when everyone's making money and the economy is up higher. They only strike when they don't have enough money to pay their bills.
Mike, I'm getting ready to get into this
Go ahead.
because there's some very significant things going on here that most people are not going to be aware of. Okay. The Screenwriters Guild strike that you were talking about in Hollywood. And then that led to the SAG strike in support of the Screenwriters Guild.
Yeah.
Okay. That was, again, that wasn't a push so much on getting more pay for them, but it was to set the stage of, quote unquote, how greedy these film companies are, these uber rich film corporations. They're just so greedy that they can't even provide the screenwriters with a living wage. And their profits are going up so much. And they wouldn't have these profits if it wasn't for the screenwriters.
Well, none of that's true, but okay. I understand that's a spin. None of it's true.
Well, that's exactly the spin. That's the same spin that's going on with the UAW strike. What people don't know is the latest offer to the union workers that was turned down and rejected was a 20% across the board pay raise.
Not good enough. 20% more isn't good enough.
So 20% across the board pay raise, plus they were going to get, I think it's 42 extra days off a year.
How many days off? Don't they get like 50 days off a year as is? Something like that. Something ridiculous.
Well, you have 104 days off normally if you work a 5-day week, because you have 2 days off a week.
Right.
52 104 days. They want the additional days on top of that. What they were gunning for was a 32-hour work week. That was one of the things they were gunning for, was a 32-hour work week plus a 50% pay raise.
Okay, here's what their demands are. They want to eliminate wage tiers. They want a 40% increase over the life of a contract. The 40% signifies the increase for CEO salaries. So in other words, CEO salaries over the term of their contract cannot exceed 40%, cannot be higher than 40% of what they are now. Restoring the cost of living allowance adjustments to counteract inflation. A defined benefit pension for all workers. The right to strike over plant closures. A reduced work week and more paid time off. Limiting the use of temporary workers. And increased benefits to current retirees.
Yeah, who's supposed to pay for all that?
Okay, so here's some things where this actually contradicts itself. Okay, they want to reduce the work week and have more paid time off, but yet they don't want temporary workers to fill in for those people that are working less hours and less days.
Yeah. Because the temps aren't getting union. Those aren't union jobs.
So the auto worker, or the GM in particular, offered a 20% across the board pay raise for hourly wage increase of up to 20% over the life of the contract, compared to 18% is what they originally offered. And they were offering additional time off on top of that. Okay, and this is what they're striking over. Okay, and the biggest push on this strike from the left is the record profits that automobile makers have been making, and the average salary of the CEOs. Okay, Fain emphasized that automakers collectively have made $21 billion in the first half of the year and billions more in recent years without giving hourly workers, quote unquote, their fair share. After they gave big wage concessions back in 2009, when GM, Stellantis, then called Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, were going through bankruptcy.
Because because it was either give up or you're out of business. Again, we should let them all go out of business. Just let them go out of business. These models don't work. The unions are they're like parasites. They're going to kill the host. Let them.
And that's it exactly. Okay. And right now, as we've seen in other areas, the push is against these quote unquote greedy, wealthy people.
You mean like the unions? Because the unions are as greedy as any other corporation. This is about
no. The unions are fighting for the small guy.
No. You know what? That's the one.
That's just it. Here's another thing that is not being widely reported. The strike only happened at 3 plants. And the plants that the strikes happened at are responsible for providing components and parts to other plants. Right. So these other plants have also had reductions and have been forced to lay off people.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? These layoffs don't qualify for strike pay, and they don't qualify for unemployment, because unemployment is not applicable to the results of a strike.
Right.
Okay. So we have a bunch of displaced auto workers through no fault of their own that were forced out of work and have no way of getting any money.
No shock. And
this is the UAW fighting for their employees, for their members.
They're not.
No, the UAW doesn't give a shit about their members.
No.
The UAW only wants power.
Yeah, that's what this is. This is a power play.
I always love this. They're making record profits. They never tell you where the profits are going when they tell you about the record profits. Well,
no, they don't.
If you own a 401k or you own any sort of retirement funds, odds are you probably own a piece of GM or Ford or Chrysler, whatever the name of this new Chrysler consortium is. All of those profits, yes, some is turned back into the company for investment so they can do research and development and new products for next year's models, the models coming up and all the rest of this and everything else. A lot of those profits are paid in dividends to shareholders who don't make UAW friggin' money. You get somebody who may make $15, $16 an hour working for some company who's got a retirement fund over there. They may own some of the stock. So the guy that's making 1/4 what the UAW members is making, he owns stock. So you're talking about taking away the profit margins and giving it to the UAW, but you're not taking it away from the company. You're taking it away from your fellow American who's relying on those stocks so they can then retire because maybe they aren't part of the UAW. Your teachers' unions own huge amounts of money in these things. All your other unions that are out there own huge amounts of stock in other union companies and in other lines of work. They all own it. You're going to take money from them. So don't talk about
that's what they don't understand. That's what people don't understand.
it's
Is
the
that
millionaires
these
and
corporations
taking all the money, but it's the people that get paid a dividend. That's their investment. They invested money in that company so you could have a job, so they could make a profit, and you're using your union that they pretty much made sure you had a job with to take away the investment that they made in you.
Yeah, but you know what's something that's insidious about all this? The UAW, like many of the Democrats, like most of the unions out there, they're lying to people. They keep saying record profit. Before, what they leave out is before taxes, before reinvestment. They're talking about the gross revenue return.
right.
Before anything else is taken out. Before you start looking at, oh, but now we've got to pay taxes. Now we've got to reinvest into the new products. We have to be able to pay for the union retirements before any of that stuff comes out, which, by the way, their profit margin actually is only about 11%, 11 to 15% before you start taking out all the things they need to pay. And once you take out all that stuff, their profit margin drops to 3 to 5%. That's 3 to 5 pennies on every dollar they bring in. It just so happens that you have a lot of dollars. I mean, when your average car is costing you $60,000, yeah, that's a lot of 3 and 5, a lot of nickels involved there. But they're not making a ton of money. This is a lie. And again, people don't know math. People don't know the economy. So it sounds real. It sounds good. It's crap.
Well, it is. Okay. And they also don't understand how corporations work, especially publicly traded corporations. And they think that it's just corporations are funneling these money into these unknown bank accounts of these uber rich. That's what everybody assumes. And then nothing could be further from the truth. Okay. Most of these corporations don't have anybody that owns a large percentage of them. That's why it is possible through hostile takeovers for somebody to gain control of a company without having that much of a stake in that company.
Yeah.
Okay. It used to be able, in order to have control of a company, you'd have to have at least a 51% stake in that company. Not anymore, especially not with a lot of these large publicly traded corporations like GM, Ford, Chrysler. You don't need a significant share to maintain control over that company.
This is all, it's really sad. But again, it goes back to what we've been saying about the economy and the duplicity that's going on, the way people are being manipulated. And most importantly, because we've dumbed down, I mean, we don't teach this in high schools.
No.
Kids don't know how to invest. They don't know what the stock market is. They don't know how to balance a checkbook. They don't know how to look at the government and understand what unemployment, how it affects things, how inflation is affecting everything. They don't teach that anymore. We dumb down the next generation so that when they come out with these lies, that everything's doing fine. You just don't understand. The UAW is coming out and saying, oh, we need more money because they're so greedy. And Hollywood's coming out and saying, oh my God, studios are so greedy. When was the last time that I don't know, DC, or which would be Warner Brothers, or Disney, which is Star Wars, or Raiders of the Lost Ark, or Marvel? When was the last time they had a success? When was the last time they made money? Oh, you mean several years ago that they've just been bleeding hundreds of millions, literally billions of dollars that they've been tanking on subscriptions with, which is supposed to be an income source globally on their subscriptions to their streaming services. People are getting less and less of them because there's nothing worth watching, whether it's Hulu or Netflix. But they're greedy and they've got all this money. I'm not saying that they don't make, well, they bring in money, but they're spending more and they're giving us nothing for it. Again, it's all about the spin. Why? Because these unions are greedy. They want power, and they are assuming, somewhat correctly, that the average person in America is too dumb because the federal government, through the Department of Education, said kids don't need to know about investing. They need to know about critical race theory.
Now, we are rapidly getting into an age where truth is being labeled as misinformation, and misinformation is being labeled as truth.
And truth is dangerous.
Okay. And we are seeing more and more what is being propagated as truthful, as honest, as valid, as surpassing the fact checker's credibility criteria, as
So-
being put forth as legitimate information. And we're seeing more and more stuff that is actual truth, that is legitimate, being passed off as misinformation.
So I'll give you a great example of that. Slightly different subject, but we all know about the gun ban.
Actually, I was getting ready to get into that a little bit.
Yeah. So
Here in a little bit.
perfect segue. New Mexico. The governor says, Governor Grisham, she says that because emergency, if she says the word emergency, then she gets to literally take the Constitution, burn it, and step on the ashes. That's what she says. And
Yes.
So she did that and banned all concealed carry. She basically stepped all over the Second Amendment and told Americans in New Mexico that you could not defend yourself.
Now, hold on a second, Michael. It wasn't just the Second Amendment.
Well, no.
Okay. It's also in the New Mexico State Constitution. And here is from the New Mexico State Constitution. Okay. No law shall abridge, this is under Section 6 of Article 2, the Bill of Rights of the New Mexico State Constitution.
Yeah.
No law shall abridge the right of citizens to keep and bear arms for security and defense, for lawful hunting and recreational use, and for other lawful purposes. But nothing herein shall be held to permit the carrying of concealed weapons. No municipality or county shall regulate in any way an incident of the right to keep and bear arms, as amended November 2nd, 1971, and November 2nd, 1986.
Right. So she broke the Constitution. She broke state law.
State Constitution, not state law, state Constitution.
Correct. State Constitution. And she violated all this because she says, I can claim emergency and I can do anything that I want.
And no right is absolute.
And no right is absolute. Because as long as she says emergency, she can do whatever she wants, which is an authoritarian dictatorship. That's what dictators and authoritarians say. Not only was she wrong, and immediately a judge came out and said, nope, that's absolutely wrong. You're absolutely unconstitutional at every level. This is wrong. So her answer was, she turned around and said, well, I know what I'll do. I will just narrow it. So now you can't have a firearm in gun-free zones, in parks and at schools and gun-free zone areas where 83% of the crimes happen. You can't have a firearm. She did that just yesterday, I believe it was. No, excuse me, that was today that she cut it back because the court said you can't do it at all.
Well,
It's
yeah.
illegal.
Federal
And so she
judge
said-
came out and
Yeah.
said, okay, federal judge blocks suspension of the right to carry firearms in public ordered by New Mexico governor.
Right. So we know that this is absolutely violating everything. And she's wrong fundamentally on every level. But here's the thing that I see, and this is being covered by KOB. This is coming out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. And she says, well, it's successful. Her spin on this is it may be illegal, but it's successful because she says, since the week I can barely see this, so bear with me, folks. Since the week I declared an emergency, we have seen 296 shots fired in Albuquerque and in Bernalillo County. Last night, there was gunshots, a major violent crime. This is why she's doing this. Well, you just violated everyone's rights, and it didn't make them safe. So her justification for doing this is, she already took away everyone's rights. And from the time she started taking away everyone's rights, no one got safer. The criminals continued, or perhaps even increased, the amount of crime that they were doing because American citizens weren't able to defend themselves. And she's saying, see, because there's more crime, because that she did something unconstitutional, that means she should still do something unconstitutional. Do you see the spin, the propaganda? This is insane. These are her words. I am quoting the local news. This is Albuquerque news. It is insane the level of propaganda and lie that is being put out there.
Okay, now the judge, U.S. District Judge Urias, David Urias, is the one that literally put the injunction on this order.
Yeah.
Okay, and he agreed with plaintiffs in several lawsuits who said that the order violates constitutional rights and granted a temporary restraining order to block the governor's suspension of gun rights in its place until an October 3rd court hearing. Okay, now, as everybody knows, we all know the Second Amendment of the Constitution. We also know that the New Mexico State Constitution, which is prohibitive of any gun regulations, with the exception of concealed carry, is pretty straightforward. Okay, the government cannot take away your right to self-defense. It cannot. It cannot take away your right to own a firearm.
Did you see? I don't know if you guys saw it. I travel in the circle, so I see a lot of shit that probably a lot of guys don't. All of these left-wing anti-gun zealots are now trying to quote Bruin as a means of justifying what this New Mexico snapping turtle did. They're trying. This is legit. This is legit. They are saying that banning the Second Amendment is part of American tradition. This is the Bruin quote, because you know how Bruin saying it's not part of our heritage, our tradition, and this is that's how it's got to be viewed.
Oh yeah, I've been seeing those.
All right, they're saying, and what are they doing? They're showing stills of movies that were filmed, whenever, okay, and they're showing films of Unforgiven, Tombstone, Shootout at the OK Corral, Billy the Kid, and they're showing all these still images of these movies produced anywhere from the 50s all the way up to the 2020s, where the good guy comes riding into town at night and it's raining. There's a sign on the wall as you're into the town that says firearms prohibited here. You have to turn in your firearms with the sheriff. And this is a gun-free town. And they're saying, see, these states have a history because it's well
That's a movie.
No.
That's a movie.
Aside from the fact that it's a movie, I'm going to show you their stupidity as soon as I get to. You have to listen.
Okay.
They're saying New Mexico, all of these states had a tradition of banning firearms in the capitals and the towns and the cities and whatever. And it's part of the Constitution. What they're failing to realize is that this is when these areas were called territories.
Yeah, they weren't states.
They weren't states as of yet. And as the fact that they were not states, were not necessarily bound by certain parts of the U.S. Constitution, and they could violate your friggin' rights because they weren't part of the Union at the time that they were doing this.
Well,
That's
something
what-
else that they are really good at trying to do and trying to.
After 1912, you didn't see a whole lot of people in Arizona saying, oh, you got to turn your guns in here.
No.
Because once you ratify the Constitution, that's it. Now you're part of the American tradition. With the bullshit you pulled before is not applicable anymore.
Well, another way they try to establish a tradition of banning firearms and restricting firearms is going back to British laws in the United States.
Yeah, like they can go to the friggin' Magna Carta. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit what they want to go back to.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if they want to pull the logbook from the and see what was common then and what was tradition. I'm sure you find a lot of shit there that you don't want back now.
They have actually not been able to find an actual statute on any law books where there was an actual prohibition on firearms.
Of course not, because it didn't happen. And that's why they go to movie stills, still frames, rather than actual laws.
I mean, even in these territories, they can't find an actual statute or ordinance. Okay, they can't find it where it is actually a part of the governmental record where these supposed prohibitions actually existed. That's why they have to resort to movies and so forth.
These are the same guy who get the same people that get their global warming advice from Bill Nye the Science Guy, their gun safety advice from Alec Baldwin, and their medical advice from Dr. Fauci.
Yeah.
These people do not have any credibility, but they will try to undermine your rights at every given turn because they think that when all is said and done, they're going to be the one with the gun in their hands. They think they're the one that's going to be in control, and it's not going to happen. I'm happy to say, I love when people say, oh, I'm sorry to tell you, but no, I'm not sorry to tell you. I'm happy to say you're not getting our friggin' guns. We're not giving up our friggin' rights. And if you guys really, really want to push the issue, man, you're treeing the wrong dog. It's just not, it's not a good way for you to go. Trust me on this.
Well, they're going to keep trying. Go ahead.
We have
invented it too. You saw what the New Mexico governor did. She turned around and she said, oh, okay, well, all right, they're going to put a restraining order on my executive order. I'm just going to alter my executive order. So now it's only going to pertain to government buildings, parks, playgrounds, and anywhere where people meet in public.
That's the other area.
Yeah, that's what I showed. That's the article I was showing.
That's the New York model.
Yeah, and it failed. By the way, it failed. By her own words, this didn't lower crime. It didn't stop shootings. She admits it herself that it doesn't make people safe, and it's still a violation of the Constitution, whether federal or state.
Well, by doing it as by doing it as an emergency action, if the quote unquote violent crime numbers don't come down, that allows her to extend that emergency action.
It's not an emergency.
Well, that's what she's claiming it as. She has declared it as an emergency.
I can claim myself a millionaire doesn't mean it's true. You can claim
Well,
anything.
She's also claiming that now she can suspend the First Amendment because she doesn't think
Yes.
that the criticism of her Second Amendment is justified.
Yeah, she's actually stated that. Okay, and she's had the sheriff of
he's against her.
Bernalillo County or whatever it's called, the county Albuquerque's in,
Yeah.
has outright refused.
Yes.
The chief of police for the Albuquerque PD has outright refused to enforce this order. The state attorney general has said that he will not prosecute anybody for violation of this order. And other numerous officials have also criticized her on this order.
Rightly so.
They can have all the criticisms and the injunctions and the stays and orders that they want. What I want to know is, where is the judge that issued the injunction against this thing to come out and, how come like one of his aides that can say, hey, Your Honor, she's trying to circumvent your order by now changing the executive order that she issued to try and get around your preliminary ruling. Why is the judge say, you know what? Let's hold her in contempt?
Because that judge can't. Okay, he can only view the case that is before him. Okay, if she modifies her order after he's adjudicated that the order in place is unlawful, he can't rule on it until it's in front of him again.
Someone has to go back in, go sue again, start the process over so that there can be a ruling, so that they can either, and depending on what the ruling is, then they can go back and say, okay, let's issue a stay.
Okay.
Has to go back into the process.
A judge is not an enforcing body.
I understand, but this is part
okay.
Of
a judge is an arbitrator.
I know, but this was part of the greater question that I was going to ask.
Mm-hmm.
You got to let me do a segue every now and then because I kind of have a point to make.
Okay.
So now the judge can't do anything.
Right.
Okay. She can change what she wants to do. The police can say, we're not enforcing this. We're not enforcing that. We're not doing this. Now, she clearly is breaking. Well, she's violating her oath.
Yeah.
Is there a specific law that she is breaking by enacting this measure?
Yeah.
Treason.
Okay. Then why isn't she?
No, it's not treason.
Prosecuted.
It's a high crime and misdemeanor. That would be treason.
How do we hold her responsible
that is
in
not
any
the
way
definition of
other
treason.
than at the ballot box? But how do we hold her accountable?
Okay. There are
in
actually
any way
two ways
around
that she
again?
can be held
This shit
accountable.
is going to be forgotten.
There are two ways that she can be held accountable. Okay. Now, her defense is going to be that she has sovereign immunity, but there are two ways. The first way is to arrest her on violation of federal law, which is Title 18 USC 242, violation of rights under the color of law, which is what she is doing. Okay, the other way is to hold her civilly accountable under Title 42, 1983, USC 1983, which is the mechanism that allows for lawsuits against public officials for violation of rights under the color of law. Okay, those are two ways. I would have to dig into New Mexico state law more specifically, but typically there are mechanisms that will allow for the removal of sovereign immunity when a public official acts in a manner contrary to a mandatory expectation.
Yeah. Most states
Okay,
have that. I know New York has that too.
all right, now
New York actually does not have a sovereign immunity clause.
No, dude, you can remove an individual. Actually, you can remove an individual from office for a violation of.
You can remove them from office. Okay.
Yes.
But they don't. Okay. Sovereign immunity clause means that a government official can't be charged or have a tort claim against them.
well, is this
Okay.
sovereign
Because
or
they are
qualified?
immune from such liabilities.
Are we talking about sovereign or qualified, and is there a difference?
Sovereign immunity. There is a difference.
Because in New Mexico, police don't have qualified immunity.
Right. But New Mexico does have sovereign immunity.
But here's the rub. He is the governor that took away qualified immunity from the law enforcement in New Mexico.
Mhm.
So while she removed the immunity for them, so they can be prosecuted if they should happen to, arrest you for something that they know to be, unconstitutional. But she retains her own immunity while taking it away from somebody else.
Mm-hmm. That's
Now,
Right. And that's where I would have to look into New Mexico state law a lot closer to determine that. And
yeah, because
these are
because
some
we were
areas
like, all
of
right.
research that we are looking into, because one of the things that we are quite frankly pissed off about is the fact that there is no accountability when these politicians pass these blatantly unconstitutional laws. They have no accountability. I mean, at best, they get removed from office when the next election comes around.
Well,
At
if
best.
there's any light at the end of this tunnel, it's the fact that the Attorney General for New Mexico said that they're not going to defend this.
Right.
So
one of the things that we are
to a point they have to defend something, but they said they're not going. They're not going to withstand any challenge on this. That they're
Right.
going to go in pretty much acquiesce. So at least
Now-
there's that. But still, she's wasting the taxpayers' friggin' money,
Mm-hmm.
violating their rights. She needs to pay a penalty.
and I'm trying to get to that. Okay. One of the things that we are doing, and this is one of the reasons why we need people to sign up and join to become paid members of the Liberty First Foundation, is we are looking into alternate ways of holding these officials accountable. And one of the ways that we are trying to do that is find mechanisms where we can remove their sovereign immunity so we can start holding them financially accountable for these egregious acts against the Constitution.
Directly accountable,
Right.
not taxpayer funded, but from their own
No,
coffers.
directly. Okay. In other words, when they lose their sovereign immunity, they also lose their ability to use taxpayer funds to pay for these egregious violations. Okay. Now, once we are able to hold these officials financially accountable, then we start seeing that there is going to be a big change. And even if it was at taxpayer expenses, I guarantee once it started hitting the taxpayer is going to have something to say about these people.
I would imagine.
Now, again, but this all takes money for us to be able to do it. It takes money to research it. It takes money to figure out what we can do. It takes money to be able to consult with attorneys to even find out if we have viable cases. It takes money to research state laws, and it takes money to actually file cases and money to actually have these cases ran through the legal process. Okay. And this is all money that we don't have. This is where we need support from people like you out there. And for those that have already supported us by joining the Liberty First Foundation, our hats off to you. Okay. We appreciate it. And if you can find ways to donate to us, we have a few different other mechanisms where you can donate directly to the Liberty First Foundation, that would also help go a long way towards our fight on this. But we're not talking just chump change. We're not talking $30 here, $30 there, $100 here, $100 there. We're talking that some of these cases are going to be upwards of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in order to fight them. Okay, in order to bring suits against these people for their attempt at violating our rights. That's why a lot of gun advocacy groups and so forth concentrate on the law instead of concentrating on the politicians, because it's a lot easier to get the law withdrawn. But the thing is by the time it goes through the process, goes through the court systems and so forth, the damage has already been done. Okay? We need to go after the people that are causing the harm.
Yeah, we're treating the disease instead of finding the cure. That's what is happening. And that's what we are going to be working on going forth with the Liberty First Foundation, is finding mechanisms to actually directly hold accountable the people that are enacting these egregiously unconstitutional laws. And there are a lot of politicians that outright blatantly say, I knew it was unconstitutional when I passed it, but I knew that it would be enacted for a period of time before it would be challenged.
Well, Biden said that. Biden has done this repeatedly.
Well, it is worth mentioning that, every time we have some governor in some state, someplace passes some sort of law that the federal government doesn't like. It was 2016 that Barack Obama first issued something that said any child in any school district receiving federal funding that wishes to use a bathroom of the sexual orientation in which they identify must be allowed to do so. Then if the school district prevents it from happening, they will lose federal funding. Not a lot of people know that he did this. This was back in 2016. We've had states since then have come out and said, you're going to use the bathroom of which you are that gender. You're born a boy, you use the boys' room. You're born a girl, you use the girls' room. We've had states where they've had numerous things that the federal government didn't like. And the federal government went of one fell swoop the next day, even if it was something that the voters themselves voted on and said, this is what the people want. The federal government has come in and, under the attorney generals, filed suit against these states. You're in some sort of violation. You're in this. You're in that. The day after the New Mexico governor issued this bullshit executive order banning the Second Amendment, several Republican senators and congresspeople petitioned Attorney General Merrick Garland and said, this falls under the purview of the Attorney General's office. You have a governor of the state of New Mexico openly and flagrantly violating the Second Amendment rights of every one of the people in her state. Yeah. Do something about it. We have heard nothing. Because it doesn't fit the scope or the agenda of this particular administration. And as long as you have an administration that is ideologically driven instead of bound by the Constitution, you need organizations like the Liberty First Foundation to be able to find a way to get done what the enemies in the federal government refuse to do. And that's act on behalf of the American people to enforce the Constitution so that your rights do not get violated. And that's why we need help. We can sit here every week and have these nice little chit chats and all these little conference sessions, talk about all what's wrong with the world. But if we're not out there actually fighting the fight and doing the things that all the other groups aren't doing, all we're doing is reiterating the same fight over and over and over again, spinning our wheels, and we don't gain traction. We have fought for so long to get back what they've taken from us. that nobody has gone and taken the fight to them and said, not only are we going to take back what was ours, we're taking back what we gave you. And that's the bullshit authority to run our lives that you have overextended yourselves. And we need to take that back from these people. And that's why we need the help of the regular ordinary citizen out there, because there's no other groups that are out there going to do it for you. And if you can't do it yourself, you need us and we need you. And that's what it is.
And if you think groups like the ACLJ or the ACLU or the NRA or any of that are going to do this, wake up.
Where are they?
Okay. They aren't filing suits directly against these politicians. They are challenging the law. That is their extent. That's all they do.
And then when they do win a judgment, you know who pays for it? You do. Your money is used to take your rights away from you. And then your money is used to defend the taking of your rights. And then your money is used again to pay a penalty to somebody who's not fighting for your rights. You're paying we use our taxpayer money to give money to groups like the ACLU because they file suit. But the ACLU doesn't turn around and use the money that they get in that victory to further your rights. No, they use the money to expand their own coffers so they can continually do it again and again. And the only people that lose out are the citizenry by either losing our rights or losing our money. It's time that your money gets spent in a place where it's going to actually do something, and that's prevent you from being a victim.
Now, organizations like the NRA, the GOA, the Federal Coalition of Firearm Owners, SCOPE, the New York Pistol and Rifle Association, name any gun organization that you want. I don't care which one. Second Amendment Foundation. Okay? They stay in business by just challenging the laws. They don't want a case where it is adjudicated where it will actually prevent future laws from being enacted. Okay? Because if they do that, they're out of business. I would love nothing more than for the Liberty First Foundation to be put out of business because our government is actually adhering to the Constitution.
If only.
I would love nothing more.
Wouldn't it be nice to have that extra 30 or 40 hours a week that each of us spend doing the shit that we do that we can't even talk about, that nobody even knows that we do?
Mm-hmm.
You know, wouldn't it be nice to have that 30 or 40 hours a week to do something else? Because we're not getting paid for it.
Well, yeah.
I would love to be able to, to do some things around the house. I would like to be able to go on a vacation once in a while. I would like to, to go to the range, but we're working so diligently behind the scenes to try and get things done. It would be nice to have that vacation. Now, listen, Gun Owners of America is a phenomenal organization.
I don't discredit any of them. Okay.
Right. They do great work. But
their mission is to just challenge laws because, they thrive on more laws being enacted.
Well, here's the thing. If everybody was healthy, nobody would need a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
If your laws weren't being violated, you wouldn't need somebody to fight for them.
Right.
That's the crux of it. But as long as government is helmed by people, fallible people, imperfect people with agendas, there's always going to be the need for some group or organization to be a watchdog to make sure that these groups are acting on your best behalf. And unfortunately, a lot of these organizations, left or right, have gotten to the point where they profit from the agenda more than they profit from the cure.
Right.
And like we always said, the media loves when a kid gets shot. They love when there's a mass shooting, because if it bleeds, it leads. That's ratings. That's money. Moms demand action, love a school shooting. They love that because they get to raise funds off of it. And on the flip side of it, all groups on our side have to raise the money to fight against these people. We're not interested in having these prolonged fights. We want to go in, knock these people the hell out of the game, and put an end to it once and for all. And say, that's it. You will stop violating our rights.
And
If
and
we
that's
could do that,
that's the
if we
crux
could
of
make
it.
ourselves irrelevant, that would be great.
Okay, is these people were elected by the people of their constituencies to represent the people. Okay, under the mandate and the auspices that they do so within the confines of the constitutions that are applicable. That means the United States Constitution and the Constitution of the state. And when you start getting at the lower levels, the county and town charters that they are held accountable to as well. The thing is our politicians have set barriers up to make it almost impossible. But there are ways around these barriers.
Always
And that
is.
is where we're working at. Okay. And we need to start holding these people accountable. We need to start when they violate our rights as individuals, then they need to have some skin in the game to know and to make it heard for violating our individual rights. And right now, that's not happening. Okay. So they know that with impunity, they can violate our rights anytime they wish. And sure, the law may get challenged, it may get overturned. It's no skin off their teeth. And while the law was enforced, guess what? We either jailed a bunch of people or we collected a bunch of fines.
Yeah.
Okay, come on, we're better than this.
We can be.
Okay, and this is where we need to have true accountability of the people that are representing us, because their job, first and foremost, above any others, is the protection of the rights of the people they represent. That is their obligation to us. That is what our expectations of them are when we elect them to office.
Yeah.
Okay, now this is a nice segue, and we're actually going to. I know there's a ton more stuff that we probably should talk about, but we're going to try to keep this under 2 hours tonight. One of the things that I do want to break into, if you already don't know this, tomorrow is Constitution Day. Okay. Now, most people don't realize just how significant the Constitution of the United States actually is. Without it, we would not be the United States of America. We would be the Confederated States of America, because we were operating under the Articles of Confederation prior to the Constitution of the United States. And essentially what that set up was it set up 13 sovereign nations, all working as a confederation for the greater whole. We would have never survived without the United States Constitution being drafted. And essentially, the framers of the United States Constitution violating their orders to just amend the Articles of Confederation. Now, there is a push by multiple organizations for an Article 5 convention, which is a convention of states. And if people don't understand what that actually entails, let me put it out here. The last time we had a convention of states, the articles of governments that were applicable at the time were completely abandoned. And what came out of that last convention of states was the United States Constitution. There is call on both the left and the right for a new articles or a new convention of states. Okay, which is an Article 5 convention. Which, if you don't know this, that is one of the ways of amending the Constitution.
Right.
However, it also opens the door for changing the entirety of the Constitution by the convention attendees.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're true, it needs to be ratified by the states under whatever terms are put forth out of the convention. Okay, and if the terms are to stick with the original Constitution, which means 3/4 of the states, that is one thing. But the original Articles of Confederation required a unanimous consent from all the states for changes to the Articles of Confederation. That wasn't applicable when the new Constitution was put into effect. And once they received 9 states as ratifying the new Constitution, then the United States was formed under the new Constitution of the United States. People don't get that. All that it takes is for a new Article of Convention to say 50% of the states need to be in agreement to change. And if 50% of the states agree, guess what? We're under a new article. The old states, the states that don't agree may still be under the original Constitution, but the states that did agree would go under that new Constitution. One of the states that are pushing for an Article of Convention of States is California, specifically Governor Newsom, because he just put forth an amendment to the Constitution, and that is his justification for a convention of states. And that new amendment to the Constitution that he's put forth guts the Second Amendment.
Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
So when we go through our day tomorrow, we need to realize just how significant the Constitution of the United States is to each of our lives, and how significant it is to the fact that we still have a country that went from basically nothingness, being controlled and part of the English Empire, to a world leader in a very short period of time. Tomorrow, on Constitution Day, the Constitution becomes 236 years old. That's 236 years, which is the longest of any country to still be under a single constitution or a single governing doctrine. No other state has duplicated that.
Not surprised.
Now, there are other countries that have tried to emulate what we do. However, they've lost sight of the fact that we are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And a lot of the problems that we see happening today is because too many of us refuse to be involved in our own governance. Sure, we bitch and moan, we complain, but are we actually involved? No, Too many people are too busy saying, I don't do politics, or following the latest TikTok craze, or the latest Instagram fad, or too worried about what's going on with the Kardashians, or the housewives of Orange County, or any of these other stupid shit. Okay? The Constitution affects our lives, people, each and every day. And when our politicians in Washington, D.C., and in our state assemblies and legislatures are actively seeking to violate that and then try to convince us that it is allowable, that is when we need to become the most involved in our governance. Point of example is what the New Mexico state governor tried to do this week. Or last week, I should say, actually. We need to look at what happened during the lockdowns and the damage that happened from those and the mandates that were completely unconstitutional, violated every right we had.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And why? And we just submitted. We just succumbed to them. Are we going to allow this for our future generations? Or are we going to take a stand today and look at what tomorrow actually signifies? Because tomorrow signifies a grand experiment that was never contemplated prior to the framers sitting down and figuring this out. And it is an experiment that has lasted 236 years. But yet, today, we are probably further away from the Constitution than we have ever been.
Yeah.
And that is because we, the people, have refused to hold our governments accountable.
You're right, Mike. You're right.
Okay. I mean, that's about what I have to say on it. Tomorrow is a very important day, and it's going to be really telling to see just what type of weight the media and the government itself actually puts forth for it, because this should actually be more significant than any other date other than Independence Day.
I don't think they're going to give it much weight.
Oh, I know they won't.
No.
I know they won't. But this, of the holidays that we have, tomorrow should be a federally recognized, mandated federal holiday.
Well, that's
And
right.
it's
I
not.
heard that Sleepy Joe's going to try and make National Ice Cream Day the next federal holiday. Or,
Who knows what that means?
I mean, it's not.
National Sniff a Kid Day.
Okay. You will go tomorrow. Okay. And tomorrow's Saturday. So yeah, most banks are closed. Some of them might be operating half days or whatever. But everything's going to go as normal. Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's not a federally recognized. Well, it is federally recognized holiday, but it's not like Memorial Day, Labor Day, 4th of July, Christmas,
it's more
or
of an
any of those others.
It's a day of recollection, an observation,
Yeah.
a day of remembrance, but it's not a holiday.
Mm-hmm. And it should be. Okay, because aside from Independence Day, tomorrow back in 1787 had more impact on the founding of our nation than any other event in our history.
True. That is true. And
Well,
the media
I'll
is-
tell you another day. I'll tell you
Yeah.
another day that should be recognized, and that would be September 13th. So those of you who don't know, September 13th is the birthday of my partner, my friend, my brother, Michael Marshall. So before we go out tonight, just wanted to bring back another important day in our history's great nation, and that is the presence, the introduction to Michael Marshall, sovereign savior of the Constitution, a warrior for your rights, Michael Marshall. Michael, happy belated birthday again for those of you in the audience.
Thank you,
Happy
Frank.
birthday, Michael Marshall. I got to break your balls, man. You're getting old. Yeah.
Well, you could have been talking about how he was debating with Ben Franklin about all this, but you know.
Where do you think Franklin got the idea for the bifocal?
Well, there you
Franklin nearsighted, people who's farsighted. You know, they said, well, how do we put our heads together and come up with this? And then there you go. You know, and aside from that, you know, he also from what I understand, Ben Franklin asked Michael to told him go fly a kite, put this key on.
Hey, that's where I get my electric personality from.
Yeah, well, you don't realize Ben Franklin is the inventor of the lightning rod. Otherwise,
He is.
Michael Marshall Project. That's what that was. But hey, listen, just we can't let this week go by not talking about what's going on in New York City with the. I don't know if you guys saw. I mean, Vass, you're close to it, but you missed out on the big hoopla.
Well, I'm in the city, but I couldn't get to it, and it's not worth it. It's not worth it.
Yeah, it was so nice to know that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the Penguin Jerry Nadler were out there being ostracized by their own constituency over the 100,000 plus illegal immigrants that it is costing New York City $60,000 each to house, home, feed, clothe, educate, and everything else. And yet, in order to facilitate the housing of 100 plus thousand illegal immigrants, New York has had to put the boot to 85,000 American citizens who were living in shelters, including 24,000 children.
Yeah.
Are now displaced, living in God knows where, in some sort of tent city or on the street, or God knows who the hell knows where the hell they are, because they're not taking them in, and they don't take record of what happens to them. They only keep a notice of them when they're in custody, but when they're out of custody, nobody cares where they went. So we've got 85,000 American citizens now displaced in the greatest city on earth, which was the Rotten Apple, and AOC and Jerry Nadler are out there being screamed at by the people of New York about how they've betrayed their oath. They've done this. Now, mind you, New Yorkers, remember November when you went and you had a choice? You could go with this or you could go with that. Well, you went with this, and this is what you got. So
God.
you can
That's a wrap.
blame your politicians all you want for what New York City is going through, but at some point you're going to have to own up to the fact that this is the government you put in place. These are the people you elected to represent you with your open arms sanctuary city policies, and now your fellow New Yorkers are being put out on the street. And just so I can drive the point a little further home for you, how many nurses, doctors, teachers, firefighters, sanitation workers, police officers, other municipal workers were fired and laid off because they didn't want to get the jab?
Over
How many?
45,000.
How many? Oh, okay. Now,
34,000 doctors and nurses, and another 11,000 city workers in New York City alone. So it's over
okay,
45,000.
right. So I'm sure that at some point, majority of New Yorkers, if you want to use the 7 degrees of separation clause, most New Yorkers know personally, or at least know of, some municipal worker in New York City that lost their livelihood because they wanted to make sure that they weren't given an experimental vaccine.
Yeah.
There is no such policy for the 20 some odd thousand children of these illegal aliens who are
Nope.
now in school with your children
Yes.
that they had to be vaccinated. They
Yeah.
have no record of who these people are or where they came from, where their origins are. They can't validate a criminal record. They can't validate a previous address. They can't validate a date of birth. They have no record of who these people are, what they've ever been vaccinated for, what their medical or criminal psychological histories are. But while they fired New York City residents for exercising their individual liberties, they are now cramming all of these people into school with your children.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to tell your children that if your kid doesn't wear a mask or get the vaccine, they are the problem.
Yes. That is exactly what
So,
they're going to do.
so New Yorkers, I say this as somebody born and raised in Brooklyn. I still have the accent, as you could probably tell. When I grew up in New York, if you transplanted the 1978 me into the 2023 New York and looked around, I would be so stunned at what you have allowed to happen to my home. You've not only allowed this criminal enterprise to run rampant, and I'm not talking about the criminals. I'm talking about your politicians, your leaders.
Oh, yeah.
Your leaders are the criminal enterprise. They have unleashed hell upon the city. You are living in a prison. You can't walk outside your house without having to have cameras shoved up your ass, speed bumps everywhere, stoplights everywhere. You can't do a damn thing without somebody knowing about it. God forbid you drop a piece of aluminum foil into your regular garbage pail, you get a $120 fine because you're not recycling properly. They have people inspecting your frigging garbage, inspecting your garbage and writing you fines, but letting people do crack on the sidewalk, crapping on the sidewalks, peeing all over the city, doing whatever the hell they goddamn well want to, and when they make an arrest, there's no bail. New Yorkers, what happened to your friggin' balls?
Well,
What happened to the tough New Yorker that took no shit from nobody?
They
That
elected.
would never have allowed this to happen to your city. What have you done to yourselves, people?
It's easy.
Where
They
is your
elected people.
grit?
Well, the answer is they elected people like Jerry Nadler, who denies and refutes that things like Antifa, a terrorist organization that violates every local, state, and federal law in the nation. They are recognized as a terrorist organization. They were responsible for burning down Minneapolis. They were attempting to do the same thing this year in Atlanta. And Jerry Nadler says they don't exist. You have people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She isn't a Democrat. She is a what is it? The
A
national
communist.
well, she's a socialist. Yeah, socialist.
She's a
Which is
communist. So is Nadler.
National
listen.
social. That's it. She's the National Socialist of America, and
Right.
this is it's endemic of what we are seeing throughout the city. You have individuals whose exact publicly stated purpose is to break the Constitution, to change everything about the foundation of America because of, well, you can call it critical race theory, identity politics, you can call it intersectionality, but essentially they want to transfer power, not just money. They want to redistribute power to themselves.
Right.
And that's how you do this.
We know the agenda. We know the agenda of the politics. We know the agenda of the politicians. I'm talking directly to the people of New York. There's an old expression about, oh, if you believe that, I got a bridge to sell you. That used to be a scam about people selling people the Brooklyn Bridge. All right.
Yep.
You used to go on street corners. You would see guys playing 3-card Monte. You'd see guys playing dice on the street. You'd see guys asking for directions. You see in a They didn't target New Yorkers. They targeted the tourists because they knew that the tourists were these wide-eyed, doe-eyed, gullible bastards that could be taken for a roll and taken for every dime they had. Because in my New York, in the New York I grew up in, the New York you guys grew up in, you couldn't pull the wool over a New Yorker's eyes. They knew a line of bullshit when they saw it, and they called you out on it. They called you out on it. They knew a lie when it was, and they were, what are you, friggin' kidding me? They knew a bullshit artist when they saw it. There was a certain toughness that went back in the 70s and 80s where if you went around the world and you said you were from New York, nobody messed with you because they knew that you were a New Yorker. You could handle your own. You didn't take no bullshit. You knew you could throw down if you had to, and nobody could pull the wool over your eyes. New Yorkers, you've become nothing but a friggin' you're an embarrassment.
You want to know why, Frank?
Single party rule.
Please tell me, because I don't know what the hell happened to the people like that.
Because it's been diluted. Okay? The population in New York is 8.468 million people.
A little bit less, but yeah.
Right?
It's under that, but go ahead.
You add on to that 113,300 asylum seekers, as they're classifying these people.
Okay.
That is 1.3% of New York's entire population.
Yeah, they're not.
Now, you take that over several years of them doing this, the population of New York has been diluted.
Well,
so you don't have true New Yorkers there. You have
the true New Yorkers that are there. If you're not listening to what I'm saying, I'm going to say something to you now, strictly because I want to piss you off. Strictly because I want to piss you off. New York, your pizza sucks now. Your bagels suck. Your pizza sucks. Your bagels suck. You can't find the 24-hour diner anywhere you go in New York City anymore. You can't find a goddamn cup of coffee for under $3. You can't do shit in New York that you used to be able to do. God forbid you want to go cruising on a Saturday night and find somewhere cool to hang out with your friends and do whatever you want to do. You suck. New York, you suck now. Everything that made you great, you've traded away for complacency. You've given up the title as King of the United States, and you suck. And it's your fault. It's your fault. Chicago's got better pizza now, and their politics are almost as bad as yours. New Jersey's got better bagels now, and they're using Jersey water. Not even New York water for that crap. New York, that's how far you've degraded yourselves, is that everything that you were once known for, you can't even be known for anymore. You might as well have filmed Saturday Night Fever and Taxi Driver in friggin' Ohio, because it doesn't even represent New York anymore. It doesn't represent New York anymore. The New York that you stand there talking about, oh, I'm only paying $5,000 a month for my 400 square foot apartment. You're sheep. You're blind. I don't know what the hell happened to you, but really, if you don't control of your city, Eric Adams is going to be 100% right. He's responsible just as much as the voters are for the shit going on in the city. And he said New York is about to be destroyed, and you deserve it because you brought it upon yourself. If you don't right this ship the next election and turn this crap around and get rid of these communists running your place, start taking down your speed cameras, start taking down your spotlight cameras, digging up your friggin' roadways, you can get rid of the speed bumps and start living like friggin' free Americans again. You're going to deserve to be exactly like the Kurt Russell movie, Escape from New York. Well, you might as well put a
they're not going to change. It's going to get worse.
And here's the thing. You brought up a few key points during that. Okay. There's a reason why apartments in New York for a 400 square foot apartment cost $5,000 a month.
Yeah, they do.
Okay. And it's not because the value of the apartment
Well,
went up so much, it's because of the politics of the city. Okay. That's what's driven that up. Everybody tries to point the finger at the greedy landlords.
no, it's not them.
No.
They're trying to survive on the taxes they got to pay.
Okay. And honestly, most landlords are living just like everybody else, paycheck to paycheck. Okay. There are a few that are making big money off land off
Well,
owning property.
exceptions don't count. We're talking
But-
about the majority of people.
Right.
The majority of people don't make. They're not billionaires. They're not all
No.
millionaires. They're not all
And
black.
the ones that are owning the more common places to rent in New York are common New Yorkers.
They're leaving. Quite honestly, they're not here. Right. There is a house that in 1981, 82, nice Jamaican family moved in. It's a brownstone in the Bronx, in the North Bronx. And I know what they paid for it. They sold it for this year 10 times. 10 times what they bought it for. That's what they sold it for. And it took about 3 months. And that's now a multi-family, multi-apartment, a single family house turned into a multi-family rental project because a corporation bought it. That's why the prices are going up. And that's why did that happen? Because the politics pushed the people, that family that I've known for 4 decades, everyone left New York. Why? There's no reason to stay here. They're losing their freedoms. They're paying more than what they're getting for it. And the government's not listening to them. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Jerry Nadler, they're not listening to their constituents, which is why their constituents, it's not the first time that Jerry Nadler nor Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, they've been yelling at them for months, for years.
And they'll both get reelected.
Because the news media doesn't cover it. So everyone thinks, well, they're beloved. No, they're not. It's just that no one gets to see that.
Well, as Dow pointed out, now you know why there's 100,000 new people in New York City that no voter ID, because the voters that they lose, they had to replace.
Mm-hmm.
The votes they replaced, because you know whether every single one of these ones, you notice somebody going around that hotel. There's somebody going around that hotel where they have all of these people that, you know, they're registering them to vote. You know they're registering them to vote. They're getting them social security numbers. They're getting them to vote.
They automatically get that. As soon as they go in for a license, they get automatically registered to vote, period.
By the way, I forgot what the name of that hotel was, but do you know that a majority of the hotels that New York City is paying to house all these illegals in, do you know that they're all owned by the Saudis?
Might be the Roosevelt you're thinking of. But yeah, a large number of them are.
A majority of the hotels that New York City contracted to house these illegals are owned by foreign entities. So they're not even paying American companies or American property owners to house these people. And the money that's being paid is going overseas to other countries to facilitate that. Now, this is absurd. This is absurd at every level. And I got into it with some lady on Twitter. Or not Twitter, or Instagram. They got some kid who's a realtor in New York City. He goes around and he shows, oh, this apartment is for rent. Why? Look at this apartment. It's spectacular. It's 600 square feet of God knows what, living in a basement with a 40 square foot courtyard that they call a backyard. Oh, the rent is only $3,800 a month. You could share this with 3 or 4 people. I couldn't share that with a fucking chihuahua. And you're talking about the owners. And some woman, I was like, how are you people paying for this crap? I don't understand. Some woman says, I pay $6,000 a month for my apartment, and you're just jealous that you can't afford to live here. I'm like, lady. I got out I got out. I will think about your $6,000 a month, rent while I'm mowing my half-acre lawn. Thank you very much. I'm not worried about that. When I'm in my kitchen, that it takes me a half hour to walk from one side to the other because how big it is. I'll think of your little loft apartment and how jealous I am. When I have to use the intercom to find my wife because I don't know what part of the house she's in. I'll think about how jealous I am over that. When I'm not paying my $18,000 a year tax bill for my property, I'll think of how jealous I am.
Yeah.
That's when I think I am. I tell people I'm from Boston now. I don't even call a water fountain a water fountain. I call it a bubbler. Now I'm trying to pick up the Bostonian vernacular because I'm almost embarrassed to say I'm from New York when I look at what has happened down there in that city.
Boston's even worse. Most of
Yeah,
California is even worse.
yeah,
Chicago, Baltimore.
but Boston's not getting the share of the headlines right now of what kind of a shithole it's turned into. New York is garnering most of that. Until I can find another big city that actually is respectable enough, I'll start saying I'm from there. I would say I'm from Chicago, but yeah, but they got to sit. But their road is called Wacka Drive. I don't know. Don't sound right to me. But I don't know. The world has gone nuts. The world has gone nuts. I don't understand what it is. Listen, I'm gonna get out of here. I got some pills to take. My
Yeah.
blood pressure's up because now I'm thinking about my hometown, and I'm so. Listen, I love New York. I do. And Lori used to say when we moved out of New York 22 years ago, she said, "Don't you miss New York?" And I said, "Everything I missed about New York was dead before I left it."
Mm.
It was already
Yeah.
my all the favorite things that I loved about New York were already gone by the time I was leaving. So there was nothing left for me to miss except the few people that I left there behind. And I sadly still have friends and family that haven't been able to get out for one reason or another. And I've got friends and family that literally threw everything away, threw it all away. Pensions, good jobs, nice places. They threw it away because they wanted something better for their kids. They said, I can't put my kids through this. I can't let them live in an environment that I couldn't live in. I don't want to see my kids go into these schools. I don't want to see them be indoctrinated and educated the way that they are. I don't want to have them fall victim to the violence. I don't want to have them riding the subways and in the buses. I can't do this. The city's a cesspool. And they threw away everything so they could hopefully find a better life. And many of these people that left had to live in abject poverty for a period of time until they could get their feet underneath them and start making a better life for themselves. And they did. They did. Now, granted, they don't have the prestige of saying they live on the Upper West Side, or they don't have an apartment that overlooks Central Park 2 miles away. They don't get the nice smell of the East River wafting through the living room window. They don't hear the garbage truck clanging at 4 o'clock in the morning. The rats, running across the windowsill, the cats screaming in the alley. They don't have all that wonderful prestige anymore, but they got better lives. They got better lives and they're all happier for it. And they're going to live longer. They're going to have less stress. They're going to have some money in the bank at the end of their retirement that they're going to have something that they can leave their kids. They're going to have something. New Yorkers, you're going to have nothing left. Nothing. I miss my old New York, and I hate to see what you've let become of the greatest city in the world. I really am. I don't look back on my life as a New Yorker with regret. I look back on it as remorse because I look at it as a friend I no longer have. I look at it as a friend that's passed, that I wish was still there. I wish I could go visit my old friend, but I can't. You killed it. You killed my friend.
Yep.
And it's just such a damn shame. New Yorkers, please grow a set. Remember where you came from. Get back to where you were. There's hope for you. There's hope. And if you
We'll
can't
see.
find the hope, you can find a bridge or a tunnel and get the fuck out.
I think most people are getting out, but
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope something's happening. All right. So what didn't we cover this week? Let's see.
there's a
Mexico.
bunch more, but
We
those
got Hunt.
are
We
the
got
major
Hunter.
stories.
Yeah, we covered Hunter, and we'll see what the hell happens with that. Just keep an eye out. You're going to start seeing them raise Kamala's profile.
Yeah.
My personal prediction is that Joe starts to have a couple more incidents where he's forgetful. And remember, Joe had some brain surgery some years back, for
Couple.
some issues that he was having with his brain. So at some point, he's going to start having a little bit more cognitive disconnect, and he may have a slip and fall injury at home that renders him incapable of doing the job. And Kamala comes in, and then after the impeachment inquiry and they find out all the corruption, they'll find that he's incapable of standing trial. And he's Vincent the Gin Gigante all over again. So watch.
We'll see about that.
Oh, speaking of, Marshall,
Yes.
the crimes that Hunter is being indicted for these are federal crimes. Are these crimes because it's being done in Delaware? Are these crimes something that he can be pardoned for?
Yes.
Or no?
Yeah.
So because they're not state crimes, but are there any gun-related charges that can be levied at the state level in which he may not be pardoned for?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So there's a possibility that, aside from a sweetheart deal, that Joe's last act, walking out of the office as he pardons.
But that would require the state attorney general to file charges against him,
Which ain't going to happen.
and that's not going to happen.
No, not for state charges, but there is a possibility that that Sniffy Joe signs off on him on his last act, walking out the door.
Or he'll have Kamala do it. It'd be easier that way.
It'd
Well,
actually be better if Kamala did it.
Well, if Kamala does it, then Kamala. I mean, really, what does it matter? What does it matter? He's not
Because
like
if Joe is doing it, if Joe is stepping down because of his mental facilities, then it can be questioned any pardon that he would do just before he leaves, whether he has the capability.
But they won't be able to reverse it. They can question it all they want. They can't do anything about it.
Well, they could.
Actually, they could rebring charges, even with a pardon.
That would be double
provided he has not been found not guilty by a jury of his peers,
because he's
then double jeopardy would not be violated.
Right, because he's never actually got adjudicated.
I don't know. I think it would probably be neater for everybody concerned, because I don't think the Republicans would push it so much that they would want to make a second big issue out of it as long as Joe is out. If Kamala signs it, then that taints her even more than she's already tainted. If Joe signs it, then, well, it's the last swan song of this guy with his last cognitive moment, gave his son a reprieve, and eventually, like I said,
but then it would look more like nepotism, which would actually give a stronger foundation for a future administration to file these charges.
Yeah, but are they gonna? But are we now looking at such small ball that it really doesn't matter? Because now it starts to look like you're being super vindictive, and Republicans, they don't have a friggin' spine anyway. So I don't think they would wind up going for that, because it's not a brassy enough ring for them to go after. They would just be, listen, we got rid of the guy, let it be. Me now,
A lot would depend on if they thought it could lead to other things.
Collusion within the party, who knew about what at what time, how many administrations were involved.
I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it like this: if they come out with something in the impeachment hearings that can implicate that the son can be charged with something, and that the daughter,
the impeachment's not going to be about the son.
No, but evidence will come out at the impeachment about the dealings that his son and the daughter both did with the father, and because that they got money too. Got money too, and if they could have a charge, because remember, the what do you call it? Ken Starr's investigation didn't start over Monica Lewinsky, but it went there. It found its way there. So we had charges unrelated. Yeah, there were charges unrelated to the Rose law firm that came out of that impeachment inquiry.
But unfortunately,
it can go there. So what I'm thinking is if they bring up an impeachment inquiry and they can start piling up enough evidence to show Joe's corruption, if they can figure out a way how to charge Junior, the daughter, the brother, because they all got money in the tens of millions from these people, if they could figure out that there's charges that can be levied against them, Well, you know what? The gravy train's come to an end, right? Because now the father's powerless. There's no more influence that can be peddled. You're going to have charges brought against you. How about you maybe turn state's evidence against the old man?
No, they don't care about that. And that wouldn't matter. They'd be going, you don't want Joe's out. Their goal, actually, what they're looking for and what may come out of it. Sure, everyone gets indicted. Who cares? The question is, does this lead back to other administrations like the Obama administration? Does it lead to the leadership like Donna Brazile or Hillary Clinton, any of the other figures within the leadership of the Democratic Party? How involved were they? As in, there were half a dozen members of Congress and the Senate had their kids working into Ukraine, also doing the same thing that Hunter Biden did, just in different organizations. Does it tie to that? And so, following that chain,
that's part of the thing. I mean, is there a possibility that all of this gets leveraged against Joe, and then Joe has to use the leverage against other people?
No, this is going to drop. This is all going to die. It's not going to go on.
So you think the only person who's going to fall on his sword at the impeachment is going to be Joe?
Hunter.
I don't think the impeachment's going to make it far enough before he's out of office. Yeah. And then once he's out of office, they're going to drop it.
Well, he'll be out of office before that, but they're just not going to drop it. They're not going to drop it because they're going to say, well, see, now he's out. We know we're on to something. They're going to have to, just procedurally speaking, they're going to have to continue with an inquest.
No.
They're going to have to continue to the end.
They will, especially if Joe goes out under the 25th Amendment, they're going to drop it.
Yeah, it'll be moot.
Because they're going to do it under the guise of compassion.
Well, then anyone who votes to drop it needs to be replaced too. This has to go the way the American people need to know what happened.
Oh, we do. Okay, but it will be dropped under the guise of compassion. Because if Joe goes out, and this is what I kind of see happening, and the stage has been set over the last 3 years leading up to this. Okay, Joe is going to be removed from office under under the 25th Amendment. Okay, and his cognitive decline, which in turn will pull for the end of the impeachment inquiry. Okay, which will stop the investigations. And once those investigations are stopped, then nothing else is going to come of it.
Yeah, and Hunter gets thrown in jail, but no one cares about Hunter.
Okay,
Hunter is not.
And Hunter's going to be the only one that actually ends up with anything significant out of it.
And it won't be that significant.
That's why I don't think Hunter gives.
He'll do a year, maybe 2.
Yeah. He's got to figure out a way how to turn states on his dad. He's not going to
need to. He's not going to need to. They're not going to hit him with anything.
If he wants to stay out of jail, he's going to have to.
He'll go to a country club for a year. He'll go to a country club for a year, walk out on good behavior. He'll have a little fob on his ankle that he stays in a hotel or the family home in Baltimore for another year, 2 years, and he'll walk away fine. He's going to be fine.
He won't lose any of his money or any of that.
Yeah. He'll pay a small fine, I don't know, $1 million, something like that. He'll go in for 2 years, then 1 in, and he's out.
Well, if the American people let it drop with him just leaving office and saying, okay, well, I guess that's the end of it, then we truly do deserve the government we have. Because this is not going to be any way to stop the corruption. It's just going to be another means of being able to cover it up and say the American people don't have a right to know who's leading their country.
Well, and that's it. Okay. And that's the thing is we do have the government that we deserve.
I agree with you. What needs to happen is there needs to be a groundswell of people to scream about that and say, no, we cannot stop. There is so much more that this appears to be connected to, and we deserve to find out if it is or is not.
Well, just
But the
just
question
remember
is,
this.
will that happen? And I don't think there is going to be that groundswell.
Well,
Not yet.
just remember, if they're going to say, "Oh, well, it's unprecedented to have investigations of a president after he's been no longer in office,"
No, they won't say that.
has anybody seen the J6 bullshit?
Yeah.
Don't tell me
Yeah,
that we
they
can't.
won't say that. Okay.
Yeah, they're not going to say that.
But this will be the first time that a president has been removed from office due to health reasons.
Yeah, the 25th. This will be the first time.
Yeah,
the
but
25th.
I don't think that's going to use. I think he is going to have to step himself down. They're not going to use the amendment process to get rid of
Yeah,
him.
they will.
No, he's going to do it voluntarily.
No. They will.
I don't think so.
If he steps down voluntarily, then that still gives them grounds to pursue it. If they use the 25th Amendment,
He's been removed. It's been
then he gets removed due to cognitive decline and so forth. That triggers the end of the impeachment investigation and other compassionate
because they punished him.
reasons.
That's be-
All of that. Fuck all of that. Hang this prick up. Hang this prick up.
Okay. But here's the big issue with the 25th Amendment is, if I'm not mistaken, that has to be triggered by his cabinet.
What, the 25th?
Yeah.
No, it can be done by the speaker, and as I recall, I think cabinet is involved, but it would require the Speaker of the House and I think a couple of members of the Senate, as I recall. But I know the speaker has to be involved.
Chairman of the Joint Chiefs,
Mm-hmm.
the Speaker of the House,
Yes.
Secretary of State. Those
There
are the
it is.
three that
There
can
it is.
initiate it that are
Mhm.
closest to the administration.
Yeah.
But under no way, shape, or form do they cannot let this. They cannot just say, "Well, he's not there. We don't know what's." We have to have it. This has to be thoroughly investigated. It has to be thoroughly investigated. Even if Trump comes back in or whoever comes in the next time and says, "We got to have a special counsel and investigate this whole damn thing," and actually have a special counsel that does their job and not like the last two schmucks that have had that position. You know, this can't.
You have
This
not
can't be
envisioned. You have not envisioned the media propaganda parade that is going to be put out once Biden hits the 25th Amendment to cease this and to decree or decry this, that anyone looking to continue is just looking for elder abuse and it's partisan hackery.
Good.
You haven't thought
Good.
about
This
it's
is
gonna be
the
amazing.
Hey, listen.
Okay,
To me,
so here's what the Constitution says. Okay, 25th Amendment, Section 4. Whenever the vice president and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments or of such other body as Congress may by law provide, transmit to the president pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the president is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the vice president shall immediately assume powers and duties of the office as acting president. So in other words, his cabinet has to, the vice president and his cabinet has to initiate it.
Well, you need the speaker. The
Speaker of the House will receive it along with the
pro tem of the
right.
Senate. So you're looking at 27. What are there? 27 cabinet positions. So that means you would need a majority. That
14.
Yeah, 14. Yep.
unless, like I said, he has a slip and fall and a brain injury, and then he's forced out. Then nobody has to lose face. Now he's leaving because of a medical condition.
No, it still will go to the same process because it's still 25th.
Yeah, but if he's forced out with a medical condition, like I said, say, oh, he had a stroke due to he fell and he had a stroke. He's no longer cognitive. We get him out of there. Cammy takes the place. Well, now that he's out, we really can't prosecute him for anything because he's now mentally deficient. He plays the Jimmy Snuka,
It's not going to work that way.
the Vinny the Chin
Not going to work
Gigante
that way.
routine and starts running around with his slippers and his
It's not going to
and
work
his
that way.
robe. They're not going to prosecute him if he's unfit to stand trial.
It's not going to work that way. They won't do it that way. There's just too many reasons why they wouldn't do it, and it would be because what you're suggesting, and okay, it's not realistic, assuming that it's not legit that he's actually injured, which I see no reason why it would be. He is cognitively, he's mentally deficient right now. That is a fact. But if he's claiming that and he acts like that, there is no way that between now and the day that he dies, that someone will not be able to find him and get a video of him acting in a manner that wouldn't be consistent. And therefore, there's a corruption. And now you start the whole thing over with a vehemence because the compassion that Americans have given him has just been used against them. They wouldn't do that. It's not worth it to them. It's easier and more efficient to just have the 25th used against him and force him out. It doesn't matter. He's out, and now he's been punished. They get their punishment and get to say he was punished. He's out, moving on. That's the way they're going to do it. That's the better political way to do it. I understand what you're saying, Frank.
Yeah,
it's the better political way to
see
do it my way.
handcuffs.
I understand you're never going to get that. You're not going to get that.
What we want to see, what will happen, is going to be two different things. I guarantee.
Politically, it's never going to happen.
We deserve to see the handcuffs.
We do, but not going to happen. Just politically, never going to happen.
This country's so fucked.
Okay, and ongoing prediction. I believe we're going to see a majority of presidents going forth be put in for articles of impeachment.
Every president from now on will get at least one article of impeachment. Every president will get at least one during their term.
They started with Trump on his day one, didn't they? Didn't they? Somebody file an article of impeachment on day one of the presidency?
Yeah. Every president going forward.
So if they want to say, well, who started that precedent, I think we can figure out that. All right, guys, listen, I'm out of here. I'm telling you, I gotta go.
You're the one pushing it. Okay.
We're actually shutting this down. Okay. I actually tried to shut this down close to a half hour ago, but
Frank kept it going.
Somebody's a little long-winded.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to burn up the last of my energy so I can actually sleep tonight. I gotta put my truck up on jack stands tomorrow and drop a transmission out of it. So I don't know how. I've never done this on a Chevy before.
No, it should be fun.
Actually, Chevys aren't too bad. I had 17 Chevy. I did the transmission on. It's not too bad.
Actually, I'm not.
I also did it on a Camaro C28 too.
My brother-in-law is coming in next week. Hopefully, he's bringing a transmission. He's a Chevy specialist. He's a guru. He's going to be doing. Well, actually, I'm going to have my nephew Vinny do a majority of the work. He's the mechanic in the family since I can't really physically do much anymore. So I just kind of like have to sit there. I'm going to be the tool monkey. Hand me the 10 millimeter. Hand me the 5/8. Here you go. That's going to be my job for the next couple of days. But listen, I'm getting out of here. Oh, I am going to the range tomorrow.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I'm finally going to get a day trip to the range. Yeah, there's a new pistola in the family that has to go get broken in. I'll have a report on that next week.
Good.
Cool.
All right.
So why don't you go ahead and sign us out, Frank?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you for joining us this week on this episode of the Weekly Roundtable. I am one of your co-hosts, Frank Johnson, on behalf of Michael Marshall, Michael Vasquez, the Dragon of the Southern Tier. Thank you all. God bless you. Please remember to visit us at l1f.us. Please become a premium member. Like, share, follow, subscribe, all the rest of that stuff. Find Vass on No Sound Bites Allowed. Make sure that you watch his show. It's always an intriguing show. Got to watch the 4 Marine episode this week while I was in transit. Very, very educational. Very heart-wrenching as well. You guys, you all be safe, shoot straight, and we'll catch you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel, courtesy of Alan West. Good night, all.